Three. Cookie, thank you so much for joining us, brother. How are you, mate?
I'm good, mate. Good, long time.
Cookie, Graham, if anyone wants to know your real name, but you're going to take us on an adventure today about a very, I guess, unusual product. Can we call it unusual?
It's
Ingredient?
definitely unusual.
Something from nature that perhaps a lot of people haven't heard about, and it was definitely something that wasn't on my radar until it was introduced to me. And I'm fascinated to hear all about this, hear about your backstory, why you're educated or have the ability to talk about this in such great detail, and what it can benefit, if you're allowed to say that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it is a bit of a convoluted story. So I guess we'll start at the start. So yes, my mates call me Cookie from because I'm from the Cook Islands, and that's what people from the Cook Islands are called. So my name is Graham. I'm actually a medical doctor. I grew up in the Cook Islands. All my family's from the Cook Islands, and I was fortunate enough to come to Australia on a scholarship to do medicine after I finished high school. And part of that, I had to do a research project. And, growing up in the Cook Islands, we play a lot of sport, we play a lot of rugby, had a lot of injuries. And actually, my first research project was doing a assessment on bone fracture healing, trying to assess how well the fractures have healed using sound transmission. And so I found a research laboratory at Prince of Wales Hospital, and it was actually one of the world's premier orthopedic research laboratories. And I struck up a friendship with Professor Bill Walsh there, and he facilitated my little project. And after completing that project, I kept working in the lab on other people's projects because that was the way Bill's lab would work, is that you would do your project and you would use your skills to help other people do their project. And so you didn't just run your one project. Surgeons would help operate on other people's projects. People working in the mechanical testing devices would help mechanically test other people's projects. People who were good at maths would help each other with the maths. And so it was a very collaborative lab. And so I worked on that, and I was helping a plastic surgeon do a flexor tendon repair project. So because I'd been using the mechanical testing machine, I was the one allocated to design the testing project for this. And there was a international symposium on hand surgery being held in Canberra that year. So they said, you guys should really put in this research project into the symposium. So I thought, yeah, sure. So I wrote up a little abstract. And then my plastic surgeon changed his mind, went and did some pediatric craniodystosis study. And I got accepted for full presentation, discussion, and question time. So I accidentally ended up doing a master's in biomechanical engineering on flexor tendon repair in order to complete the study, in order to do the presentation that I had accidentally signed up to doing. So I ended up with a master's of biomedical engineering and a medical degree. And through all of this, there was a little niggling question because we're working in a research lab that does bone grafts and bone graft substitutes and bone morphogenic proteins and stem cells and a whole bunch of other stuff. And in the Cook Islands, when we got an injury, people would get actively treated, and at least anecdotally, they would get better a lot faster than we were used to, and certainly faster than what we would see in a typical experience within an Australian football. And to cap that off, one of my mates who I played rugby with for the Cook Islands, he broke his leg. He got a compartment syndrome. He almost lost his foot. And then when I saw him, I said, "What you doing?" He goes, "My mum's taking me out of hospital and sending me home for some Maori medicine." I'm like, okay. And then I flew home 6 months later, and he's playing soccer with me. I'm like, we should probably have a look at this. So I went back to the lab and asked Bill, any chance we can use what we have here and see if there's anything to this story? And he says, yeah, sure, which is typical Bill. Tell me what you need and we'll figure it out. So I went back to the Cook Islands again, and I had a meeting with the president of the Koatanui. Now, the Koatanui is a collection of traditional leaders in the Cook Islands. And uniquely for the Cook Islands, it's actually a legislative part of a legislative body. So the Cook Islands actually wrote into its legislature a pair of bodies that take responsibility for maintaining the traditions, cultures, and customs of the Cook Islands. So it's actually part of our country's setup. And so there actually is a group I can go to and say, hey, if we're interested in doing this, is this something you guys are interested in participating in, giving me permission to do? And we had very long conversations about what the pros, cons, risks, potential benefits are. And the Goltanui eventually agreed to be joint partners in developing the project and gave me permission to investigate the Maori medicine. And it was passed unanimously, which, as I found out later, was the first unanimous vote of the Goltanui ever in its history,
Awesome.
because they never agree on anything. And so we managed to proceed, and it was a collection of 4 plants that I brought over from the Cook Islands. In actual fact, I didn't bring over plants because you can't bring plants into Australia. Brought over an extract, and we extracted it in the way that the Cook Islands normally would use it, which is to apply it topically, which is a very unusual thing, but that's just what was happening. Every single remedy variation had at least some component of it where it was applied to the skin. So it was brought over in a coconut oil because that was the medium which you use to put it on the skin. And it's also, as it turns out, a very appropriate medium because if you're trying to get something through the skin, it has to be able to dissolve in oil. And so the coconut oil both as a medium to transport it and as a mechanism of extracting the appropriate component actually turned out to be absolutely essential. And we found that out a bit later. As it would turn out later, if we had actually used the textbook way of extracting the plants, we would have absolutely found zero effect. Because if you extract it with purely methanol or ethanol and just use that extract by itself, we actually later on found no effect from the plant. So ironically, some gut first decision actually played out quite well.
I
And
love it. So
we
before you continue, can you identify or describe which plants these are, or plant in particular it is?
yes, it actually is from the oak tree, which is a beach hibiscus. Which is found throughout the Pacific. Most people will be most familiar with it as the source of the grass skirts that people dance with. Well, they describe them as grass skirts, but they're actually made from the bark of the hibiscus tree. So the hula skirts, so to speak. So that's the tree.
Gotcha. So this was applied topically in the Cook Islands to fractures, broken bones, and other ailments? Or am I jumping
Predominantly
ahead
injury.
too far? Okay.
No. It was used for treating bone and soft tissue injuries.
Gotcha.
So basically, they were for fractures and sprains and traumatic injuries.
So you got this extract with the coconut oil from the hibiscus, native hibiscus version of the tree that's over there, and you brought it back to Australia into the lab. Then what happened?
Well, then actually, I couldn't narrow down to just one plant. So I actually brought over 4 plant extracts, and we put it onto a animal model, which was a fracture in a leg. And we also I also checked the skin, and this was a little detour that happened to us, because I wanted to make sure it wasn't causing any issues. So I wanted to make sure it wasn't causing irritation or damage to the skin where you applied it. And we found that it caused the top layer of skin to regenerate. And we found that the fractures had a whole bunch of new cartilage forming in the very early stages in the treated ones. And this was working in both normal bones and osteoporotic bones. So we were very excited. I was very excited. I was very excited that it caused an effect on the skin because it's a lot easier to look at skin than bone. So I spent 2.5 years trying to figure out which plant was causing this effect on the skin and how to best optimize extracting it and applying it. And I got very good at doing that. And I kicked out the plants that didn't work. And then I put it back into a bone regenerating study, and it didn't work at all. So I took the plant that I kicked out and tried that one by itself, and that was the hibiscus, and that actually regenerated the bone. So there was different plant extracts were helping the skin to heal, and the hibiscus extract was actually helping the bone to heal, which was a bit of a shock. So the bone one and the skin one took off in different directions from that point onwards. So
explain to me the normal time for a bone or a fracture to heal and what you found out using the hibiscus in your studies, the acceleration, so to speak?
Okay, so bones heal over a period of time. So there's a sequence of events. First of all, there's an injury, and there's a response to injury, which is an inflammatory process, and part of the bone gets will die because it doesn't have blood flow, doesn't have structure, and that sort of has to get removed. And then new bone cells will sort of migrate in and start growing with some blood vessels, and you start forming some cartilage. And then that cartilage sort of turns back into bone. And that sort of happens over a particular time course, depending on the age of and the species of animal doing it. So for a human, sort of this will happen over a 6 to 12 week period. But I didn't have a lot of money because I was still poor and working. And so I didn't have a lot of time to figure out whether this was going to be useful or not. So we decided to take a Hail Mary approach and say, why don't we get a bit of bone injury that doesn't heal? And that way, if we can make anything start growing in that, we know we've got something useful. So we take a 2 centimeter or 20 millimeter chunk out of a bone and take it out completely and throw it away. And we know that if you do that, that gap doesn't heal. You don't bridge a 2 centimeter gap. And so we did that, and we checked it in 1 week, and we found we got new bone growing into this gap into 1 week. And we went, well, that's not meant to happen. So we actually had to repeat that experiment a few times because none of us were convinced that that was supposed to happen. But it did happen. And so we thought, well, this is very odd. But then we thought, well, what does it do for things that are also hard to heal, like when you put a bone graft in? So if you try and fill that defect, you put some chopped up bone in there, and that bone is dead, right? And so it's got to grow across this dead bridge of bone. And in human terms, the most common one you see that is when people get spinal fusions, So like if you've got a back injury or a neck injury and they join two vertebrae together, they take some crushed up bone, put it between the two, and try and get that bone to grow back. And that's a bit of a challenging surgical model. And we found that in 6 weeks, we managed to get it to not only to grow back, but it fused with bone marrow and everything. So we got complete bone healing in a 6 week period in that model. And we thought, whoa, this is just very, very odd. And it was really odd because we're in a situation where we have a lab where we have all this competing technologies that we know very well how they work. And we have no idea how this is supposed to work. We don't have a model that says, oh, this is increasing blood flow, or this is increasing this particular protein, or this is increasing this particular signaling molecule. We don't have any of those templates were making any sense to what we were looking at. So it was a really big challenge. It was one of those ironic challenges where we sort of knew enough about what was going on to knew that we had no idea what was going on. So
I love it. I love it.
So that was that's how our project started, and then we end up with this situation where people are saying, well, you got to find the chemical that does that and make it into a drug. And we're like, well, but we can't find the chemical that does that, which is an interesting thing, right? Because if you fractionate the solution further, it stops working. If you take away the coconut oil to apply it, it stops working. And if you take the coconut oil and send it through a analytical chemistry laboratory, they don't find anything. And we were in a bit of an odd situation where we're like, okay, so a plant extract in oil works. Taking the extract without the oil doesn't work. Breaking the extract into smaller and smaller pieces seems to also not work. And sending it to 6 different analytical chemistry laboratories in the world didn't work either. But we know that the plant extract works. And so this was a bit of an odd situation. And also, one of the challenges was that we needed to be able to simultaneously keep our information not quite secret, but owned by ourselves and the Haudenoy, so we don't give away our traditional medicines. But we also needed to publish it. So I actually did a PhD on it. So I wrote up a PhD on the whole biology and physiology and analytical chemistry of this project, because a PhD can be delayed in publication until the patents were granted. And we needed to get patents so that we can say it's still owned by the people that developed it, which include the Kahoot. And so that was a sort of a unusual path around things as well. So I ended up publishing a PhD, and the PhD is readily available, and anyone in the world can find my PhD and read it, and we'll go into great detail about all of the projects that we did. But we ended up at the end exactly where we ended up at the start, which was a extract of this particular plant, when applied topically through the skin, caused bone to respond, and not bone to respond, only injured bone. And injured bone anywhere, which was also really weird. So you didn't actually apply it to where the bone was injured. You could apply it to the back and it would find the injured bone. So for example, in a spinal fusion, you're not going to put it over the top of your surgical site where you've just operated, because you want to keep that sterile. So you can put it somewhere else, but then not only does spinal fusion respond, but also where they took the bone graft from on the hips respond. So it was very odd. And then we end up in a even more odd situation where nothing that you tell anyone is believable anymore. Because it's all either too good to be true or too ridiculous to be true. Because you have a plant extract you apply to the skin that absorbs through it, that finds an injured bone but doesn't influence non-injured bone in a way that you don't know, even though you work in a bone research laboratory, and that the solution that you put on the skin, you can't actually tell me what's in it because apparently the lab can't find anything. And you're like, yeah,
that's it.
That's pretty much where we're at.
Beautiful. Have you been given the Nobel Prize for medicine yet for this one?
Not yet. I'm holding my breath.
Before we go into it any more, I want to understand the history of this. How long has it been recorded, verbally or orally, throughout generations in the Cook Islands? Because you must have studied that.
That is a great question. Look, as far as I can tell, it's been used as long as anyone in the Cook Islands can remember, and taught to them by people who have used it, who got taught by someone who has used it for as long as anyone can remember. So probably at the very least 14 generations would be an easy guess. My personal guess is going to be more like 30 generations. And the reason why I say that is because the major voyaging canoes that crisscross the Pacific with the same Ariki culture, which you find all the way from New Zealand to Hawaii, that was quite intense in the 1200s. And so it would be most likely that the dissemination of this sort of cultural practice would have been around there, because they had very well-established guilds and scientific centers that were set up, in particular in places like Raiatea in Tahiti. So my guess is back as far as then. But I also know that these things get lost. And so my feeling is that this is a technology that has been passed down through the generations in the Cook Islands and not lost. In no small part, because the Cook Islands is at a continuous, there's a cultural continuity since that time. So in the Cook Islands, our history starts off with, Tangi and Karika joining forces to take over the island 850 odd years ago. And the families that were there then are still the families that are the ruling families today. And so our cultural heritage has been pretty continuous for that length of time, whereas many of the other Pacific Islands have had upheavals and civil wars, and with colonialization, the dominant powers have changed hands. And so there might not have been as long a continuous cultural practice in other countries. And to check that, I actually got an ethnobotanist guy called Art Whistler who lives in Hawaii, who traversed the Pacific, making catalogs of ethnobotany of all the different plants used by all the different cultures through the 1960s and 70s. And I actually got hold of him and said, "Hey, Art, can you do me a favor? Can you find out what this plant was used for in different places? So not what they used to treat this condition, but like specifically this plant in your old books. Can you go through this and figure out what you use this plant for?" And in the Cook Islands, it was used to treat fractures and injuries, and almost nowhere else. So
It's
that was
remarkable, hey?
so that was a pretty cool exercise. He was a cool guy, actually. Um,
So,
uh,
so let's fast forward now. You've got the product, you know it works. You was talking about that nobody believes it. It's too good to be true or too crazy to be true. And so where'd you go from there?
so we managed to get it patented all over the world, which was an interesting challenge all by itself, because patenting a natural product is challenging. Patenting a natural product that is used in traditional medicine is even more challenging, and getting it patented and have extensive claims of their own on traditional medicines was the most challenging. But we managed to succeed in all of those regards, including an objection from the Chinese, which is the first time we've managed to overcome a Chinese objection, according to our patent offices, because we had good enough data to show that it biologically makes a difference. And we had also, with the Koltunui's involvement in the project, that we had very good data that this was a traditional project that was a continuity of the traditional ownership, which also made a very big difference in terms of being able to demonstrate that this is novel to the Cook Islands, and the improvements made to it were novel, and that it was clearly biologically useful in terms of the data we managed to generate. So we got these patents, and we actually had a pharmaceutical company license the patents from us, which was a experience of its own. So a peculiar breed, people that run pharmaceutical companies. Not invited to my next barbecues.
Fair enough. Fair call. Fair call. Maybe
Um,
that'll change in the future. You never know.
oh, you never know. I guess people have different ways of seeing the world, and some are
Hmm.
more friendly than others. Um, but nevertheless, the value to us is they actually replicated our studies, which was good. But they also went broke on a different project, which was not good. And so they couldn't continue to develop it, and they gave it back, which was kind of good from my point of view, because I didn't actually enjoy the process of working through that. But they had to return all the intellectual property to us. And this comes back to almost about the time I think I met you, which is around 2018, 2019. And so they gave all the intellectual property back, and we're in a situation where like, oh, what are we going to do with this? Because I've got my job. I haven't enjoyed this whole, raising capital, running a company, organizing patents and licensing and working with pharmaceutical companies. So I wasn't really keen to do any of that again. All I know is that, I had the intellectual property back for one of our traditional medicines, that if you extract it from this plant in a very particular way and apply it in a certain way, it seems to be beneficial to people to use it. So then an interesting series of things happened, none of which were planned, that all just sort of fell together in a very short period of time. The Cook Islands had invited me back to be a keynote speaker in a inaugural health conference. And as part of that, they wanted to include a section on reintegrating traditional medicine into modern healthcare practices. And they asked if I could come and speak not only on healthcare generally, but on that specifically. So I went, oh, this works out great. So we already did that. And in that conference, they asked me very specifically, are you able to make this product in such a way that people can use it in the Cook Islands if they want to? I'm like, yeah, we can do that. So I came back and said, well, that's easy. We just manufacture it in the way that we did the first time, just on a larger scale and with better equipment. And the better equipment we got was in no small part due to a grant we got from the United Nations, which we got just at the start of this licensing agreement, where because the Cook Islands, this project is one of the only ones in the world where traditional medicine was developed in partnership with the people that actually traditionally developed it. We got a grant from the UN and the Global Environment Facility, and as part of that, we got all the technology that we used to develop this transferred back to the Cook Islands. So sitting in the Cook Islands is 4-meter tall, negative pressure vacuum extraction equipment and a quadrupole mass spectrometer. Not that I need it, but I have it. And so we have this lab with all of our spectrophotometry standardization, our extraction, our solvent recoveries. All of that got put back into the Cook Islands. And so we actually have this facility back in the Cook Islands where we can then extract, refine, standardize the whole thing. And I said, yep, I can do that. I can make that. And then one of my mates back here, it was a mate that you've met, Sean Cahill, goes, so Cookie, you can buy this in the Cook Islands. I'm like, yeah, you can get it in the Cook Islands. He goes, so if you're an athlete who's injured, you can get this. I'm like, yeah, you could do that. He goes, well, I can tell you that people are going to want to use this. So let's get it. I went, well, okay, so how do I tell an elite athlete what they can do with this? Like, is it legal to use in sport? It's just a plant extract and oil. So I got hold of the Australian Sports Doping Agency and said, hey, athletes want to use this to put on an injury. Can they use it? And here's my whole scientific dossier, and here's the chemical breakdowns of what's in it, and here's our mass spec in the lab, and this is what it says. And they said, well, if you can get it tested in a wider approved lab and it shows nothing, well, it's going to fall into a low risk category. So we did all that, and it doesn't show anything, which is not a surprise because it never shows anything. But we even got it sent into a lab in France where they would take blood products from it and make sure there's no breakdown products that ticked off as something. And then COVID hit, and there was no more sport. So we went, oh, so there are no more athletes that are playing sport that are getting injured. Well, that kind of put a big break on that. And then the sports doping lawyers said the tracker, the animals are going to love, like the race hounds and the horses are going to really like this because they get injured all the time and it's catastrophic if they get injured. So by word of mouth only in that way, we ended up in the greyhound racing and then the horse racing because animals that were injured and retired were getting treated and they were getting back on the tracks and they were running and they were winning. And so we were doing really good in that. And so ultimately what happened is the vets asked us for a product. And so we developed Tvati Vet, which is a treatment for pets, in particular dogs, for treating their bone and soft tissue injuries made from the hibiscus plant and coconut oil that you rub onto the back of the dog's neck and treat its injuries. And we did this simply because vets just said, we love it, we want it. Can you make a product for us? And somehow that's how I ended up making a vet product.
Awesome. And then what's happened now with the sporting and the human endeavors? Where are you at?
So the sporting and human endeavors is you can still buy Tvati from the Cook Islands. And people have been doing that. The places like the NRL said that if it falls into the supplement list of your club, that it should be permissible in sport. And so it's really up to the individual sporting groups as to whether or not they use it. And people have been using it in sport. And in the race industry, horses have certainly been using it. The greyhounds actually changed their rules to say you can't use it, which was a little bit spiteful, but nevertheless, that's what happened to them. And so, yeah, so athletes use it. We've got very good feedback from most people that using it makes a big difference. My personal experience is it makes a big difference for my ankles. I broke my ankles several times when I was younger. I used to walk sideways down the stairs. I had to take some Nurofen just to go for a surf. And I use it personally almost religiously. If I stop using it, I notice. So personally, I use it. Many of my friends certainly use it, and but it's not something we've promoted or pushed. It's like I'm not a very good entrepreneur. I'm not great at selling stuff. I'm much more able to say, well, this is what I have. You're more than welcome to try it. So it's not a product that we've pushed or advertised. And I think that's only about to change now because we're going to put Tvati Pet into the USA, which is launching later this year. And again, that was one because we were asked to. So all of these are sort of really strange. You know, they all existed simply because people have asked us to make a product for it, rather than saying, I have this, I want you to buy it. These are all been in response to people saying, can you please make this for us because we would like to have some. It's a very unusual situation for me to be in, I guess.
It sounds like this probably should be something that everybody should have in their medicine cabinet, if people have medicine cabinets, for you know what I mean. But in case a fracture or a broken bone happens at one point in their life. And what's the shelf life on this product?
The shelf life is at the very least 3 years. I know that I've rerun experiments using extracts that were at least 5 years old as positive controls, and they certainly continued to work. And we also standardized it via spectrophotometry, and we're able to assay them, and the assays don't change over at least a 3-year period. So when we extract it from the plant, we don't just assume that what we extract from a certain amount of plant is what's in the product. So we actually take the extract and we run ultraviolet light through it, and we measure the absorption of ultraviolet light at a certain wavelength that correlates to our effective concentrations. So each of the product lines is actually standardized based on ultraviolet light absorption. So we can then check later on and see whether or not it's remaining there.
I want to ask about application and dosage, but before we get there, so what are your thoughts on aging? And people talk about bone density and reduction in bone density and frail bones and this, that, and the other as people get older. Does this play a part? And can you say, does it play a part as a solution for that?
That's a really good question, because I think aging is not a problem to be solved. It's a predicament that you need to manage, in the sense that there's a group of different things that happen, some of which are preventable, some of which are manageable, and some of which are neither of those two things. I think the overwhelming problem with aging is actually the drastic change to your autonomy that happens. And the core problem that we really need to focus on is maintaining people's autonomy rather than trying to fix underlying conditions. I think we can very much focus on trying to fix numbers or fix statistical risk factors, but really what people want to do is to maintain their degrees of independence and activity. And there's certain points in your life where injuries, in particular injuries that don't heal, can be quite catastrophic to your sense of self. I'm kind of got to the age where injuries cease being annoyances and start being severe handicaps on your ability to do stuff. And I'm not yet 50, right? But you start noticing that the injuries can actually they're not a setback, they can actually be a complete change in your lifestyle. I work in hospital where we see an awful lot of patients have falls and fractures, and they can end up being quite catastrophic changes to their lifestyle. Their independence can be completely gone, they can be completely bedridden. The mortality rate from a fractured hip is higher than the mortality rate from a heart attack. So it's the failure to recover and return to normal function that is the major problem. Prevention of these hasn't been as particularly effective as we would like it to be.
Hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of work done on bone density, but ultimately your bone density peak at 20 is your predictive factor. It's a lot harder to take people back in time and say, when you were a kid, you should have done more weight loading exercises and had more calcium and got outdoors more often. Um, that's not a good solution. So really, it's strength, mobility, balance, and you get that by being more active. And this is the sort of answer that we seem to stop giving people, is that the general answer is if you eat a really well balanced and varied diet and exercise a lot, and exercise until you're short of breath and sweating, and you do so with a group of people that you enjoy being around, and you do a varied amount of exercises rather than very linear ones, and you gain balance, confidence, and your life is better and your probability of having complications of this are less. But that seems to be a lot less easy to say and do than to write a script for something that might possibly change your bone mineral density on a test slightly. So I don't think it has a role in preventing that from a bone point of view, but from managing your ability to move. My personal experience is that makes a difference to me, where my old injuries cause recurring challenges in terms of bone mobility and pain or movement that hurt a lot less when I use it. And by hurting less, I do more. By doing more, my balance is better. And my probability of further injury and function deterioration goes down simply because I'm doing more in a more normal way. So I certainly think it has a role in that regard. And certainly from recovery from injury. Failure to recover from injury is probably one of our leading causes of social disability in this age group, and from my age group up, actually.
Beautifully said. I agree completely. I just got out of the surf, or the foil surf for 2 hours this morning, and that is all about balance and strenuous. It's like I'm standing on a tightrope for 2 hours in moving surf, which is really good. I love it. I feel so freaking good after challenging myself like that on a
How long
day.
have you been doing the foil surfing for?
On and off for really dedicated pretty much the last year. And it's the most humbling experience. I was talking to a fellow today at the car park, I'm like, mate, it's the best thing I've ever done, but it's the hardest thing I've also ever done, which is what I love about it too. It's so humbling and such a wonderful thing. I get home every day to my wife, Nick. I'm like, I did really good today. I got a little bit better. I'm getting a little bit better. And it's like just these tiniest little increments. It's not like this huge change in one day. It's just these tiny increments. And I love it. I'm stoked. I'm going to do it for the rest of my life because it does exactly what you were talking about then. It's that mobility, it's the balance, it's the presence, it's the challenge. I found what really turns me on in the realm of sports, and I can do it pretty much every day in any condition. And today was very, very challenging. It was 6 foot waves and choppy and side swells, and I was like, "Fuck, I'm earning it today."
Are you paddling prone foils into 6 foot swells?
No, 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 no. I've got
Oh,
the
gosh.
foil drive, the little the
You got the
motor.
drive. Oh, gee, I
Oh
thought you
yeah.
were dropping in on that.
No, no, but it's so fun. Like today I would have caught 80 waves and
Oh,
80
wow.
in a 2 hour session because of the foil drive assist.
Yeah.
And you might think it makes it easier and it's not hard. I come in and I'm puffing, mate. I'm puffing. Like, these ones out
Oh
there
man,
and then
I can't agree with you more. I have a foil board and we take it out behind the boat, and we surf on the wake there. And you think that because you can surf, you're going to be able to do this, and you're like learning to. It's like being able to ride a bike and then being put on a unicycle, and you go all over the place. But I agree with you entirely. It's very humbling. And one of my good mates, Blake Johnson, has this fantastic thing. We never understood. He used to put this hashtag kook when he was doing his running, and the guy's a pro surfer and a world record holder for the longest surf, and like, what's this kook thing? And he explains that he goes, you got to give yourself permission to be a kook. You got to go and do something you don't know how to do or you're not good at doing, so that you can put yourself in that position where you're cheering the little improvements and the little gains, and you're doing things outside your comfort zone, and you put your mind in the right place, your body in the right place. And I always like that idea, and it's quite, as you pointed out, it's very invigorating to come back and say, look, I managed to do a turn today. And your wife is like, you've been doing this for like 6 months, and now you can you're only now able to turn it. Like, what's
Yeah.
going on? And I'm like, well, you don't understand how hard this is. And and that's beside the point. It's just it's quite cool to be a little kid again and just learning from scratch something that you think is going to be easy, and it's certainly not. So.
Oh yeah, that was exactly what I said. I said, I'm learning to go left on the wave today, and I'm getting it. I'm getting it every day this week. I've been practicing big left-handers. She's like, "Yep." I'm happy for you. I'm stoked that you've found something that, invigorates me, and that's what it does. It invigorates me, and I get up at 4:30 in the morning. I'm out the door at 5. I get home at 10 in the morning, and I've challenged myself, and I feel so good. Now let's get into application, dosage, and location on the body. I mean, you touched on it before, but say my brother, for instance, had a skiing accident 6 weeks ago, broke his arm, shoulder. Unfortunately, I didn't do this podcast 6 weeks ago because I feel like I would have helped him, but I'm sure he'll get on the blower today or online and order himself something. So take us through this journey then.
Okay, so Tvati is it's an oil. Effectively it's a massage oil. So it is the hibiscus extract in coconut oil, and you rub it onto the skin. It doesn't matter which skin you choose to rub it onto. You can rub it onto your forearms, onto your thighs, onto your hips, onto your shoulders. Some people like to rub it on the site of injury because it makes them feel like they're actually treating it directly, but you don't actually have to put it onto that site. You just have to put it onto somewhere where you can access it and rub it in, and rub it till it's no longer oily. We have two types of products. So the traditional Tvati traditional that you can buy from the Cook Islands currently still comes in a dropper form, and you drop between 1 ml or 2 ml a day. Depending on whether it's an ongoing treatment for an ongoing injury, or if it's an acute injury, you do twice the dose. For Tvati Pet, we've actually developed this a really cool dosing system where it comes in a pack with 30 individual doses. And Tvati Traditional will probably come into that format as well because we found it so useful. And what it comes is a tiny little blister you pull off, and it doses your daily dose in a single dose without any measuring or oil or caps. Caps don't like oil very much, which is a little bit of a challenge. So the Tvati Pet comes in a single daily dose, and most people apply it to the back of the neck of the dog, to their pet, where you can just rub it in there, give them a nice pat, rub it through, and it doesn't really matter if the injury is in the hips or the paws, or for the humans, it doesn't matter if it's in your ankles, your knees. All that matters is that you get it on the skin, you rub it in, and you do it on a regular basis. So the effect is not like a painkiller. It's not like you take it and you notice an hour, half an hour later. It's different. The general effect is people just seem to notice over the course of the next several days to a week that they are moving more normally. Is the general notice that things that weren't fluid before are now more fluid, and that they are moving or requiring less intervention in order to move more normally. So it's sort of a subtle change that happens over about a 3 to 5 day period. If it's an acute injury and you're treating it and you're going to return entirely to normal function, then you probably need a course of about a month or 2 months. And if you return perfectly to normal, then that would be all you would require. If it's a recurring injury and you have recurring issues, then many people are using it for ongoing maintenance, because recurring injuries tend to recur, and if you stop, you tend to notice that they become stiff and sore again. And so for some injuries or recurrent and old injuries, people are using it as an ongoing treatment. And for acute injuries, then people are using it between 1 and 3 months.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that information. And if people want to buy it in
Uh,
Australia,
so in Australia, no, you can buy it from the Cook Islands on Tvati.com or at Tvati Official or Tvati on Meta. Or Tvati Pet is going to become available very soon in the USA. So TvatiPet.com, and it's also Tvati Pet on socials. And that's becoming available in the next 2 months, where you can purchase it. And you can purchase it online from America. So Tvati Pet's being produced. The active ingredients are made in the Cook Islands, but it's all bottled and packaged in America, and they ship all over the world.
beautiful. And Tvati, Tvati.
Tvati. Tvati was a little bit hard to pronounce, which is the traditional name for it. But Tvati is our tribute to the traditional name. And yeah, I think it's a pretty cool name.
I love it. And are there any other miraculous ingredients and that you're going to delve into in other parts of the Cook Island that have formed a this beautiful, intelligent relationship, healing relationship from plant to humans as well?
Oh, the detour we took on the skin produced Tatika skincare, which is a product that we also made, which was based on a different set of plants, and that's available for sale in the Cook Islands as well. It's a long journey though, Pete. This is a gosh, 24 years since my first meeting with the Kaltanui. I'm not sure I want to spend the next 24 years doing the next project. I'm just pretty stoked that, gosh, yeah, it is 24 years. 24 years ago when the president of the Kaltanui and I were sitting down and talking about it. So she was a truly remarkable woman. She only met me because my sister shared a bunk with her on a voyaging canoe. You know, the big canoes that they see on Moana?
Yep.
So my sister, as a teenager, was the Moana at the top of the mast, sailing off to Tahiti, and she shared the canoe with the president of the Kaltanui. And right at the outset, where she said, she was a bit skeptical about the idea, but she says, our ancestors didn't randomly float around on boats hoping to find land, and they sure as hell didn't randomly shove some plants together hoping that they'll get better. So I'm pretty certain they knew what they were doing, and if you know what you're doing, you'll figure it out. So I'm like, oh, good. And the dream that she always had was actually that the Cook Islands would make a difference, and we would be able to make something from and in the Cook Islands that would benefit not only Cook Islanders but the rest of the world. So that's the bit I'm most excited about. If we're able to share a part of our tradition and culture that improves the lives of other people, then that's probably the best thing that I can say we've done.
Oh, I love it. That is such a beautiful thing, and it was meant to be, obviously, with your sister and the president. That's so cool. What a great story.
Oh yeah, yeah. My sister's a whole different story. That's a whole nother conversation.
And there's good surf over in the Cook Islands too, so I might have to
There
pay.
is good surf. You'll have to bring a few boards. My home break broke 17 of my surfboards when I was growing up, so you might bring a quiver.
Oh, no, I would love to come over. I haven't been there yet, but yeah, it'll definitely on the cards. Mate, I love you. I really appreciate you spending the time and educating myself and others about this beautiful product and sharing the love from the Cook Islands as well. And I love that. That something that the Cook Islands can share. That's yeah, very special. Thank you, brother.
All right. Thanks, Pete. Good to see you again.
You too.